One of the largest fintech companies in the world just announced a new partnership with one of the largest AI companies in the world to co-build AI agents for financial institutions. I'm talking about FIS and Anthropic. Now, the key word here, I think, is to co-build, because as you know, there's been a huge question around which sectors inside of tech and other parts of the economy and which software makers could be completely replaced by AI. I'm Hope King, founder and host of Macrotalk, and in this episode, brought to you by FIS, I am sitting down with FIS's Himal Makwana. We're discussing the company's new relationship with Anthropic, the intricacies of their collaboration, the direction of AI collaborations, and the future of agentic banking. Here's our chat. Himal, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So first off, congratulations on this partnership. It's a big one. And I want you to really help us first to just break down the headline. FIS and Anthropic will now co-design and co-build AI agents for financial institutions. What does that mean, to co-design and to co-build?
Yeah, thank you. So firstly, we're hugely excited to be launching this at our customer event here at Emerald and launching it to the market. It's been many, many months in the works. So what does it actually mean? So as we got talking to Anthropic about their ambition on being the AI frontier lab for all industries and verticals with a specific lean to financial services, and our aspirations of becoming or staying leaders in financial technology for financial institutions around the globe, it became very, very clear on the onset that we're trying to solve the same exact pain points for our customers. They were coming at it from a tech-first, AI first principles, frontier model perspective, and we came with deep financial services relationships, expertise, trust, compliance, and regulatory rigor. So, from the onset, we were culturally very aligned. What this partnership actually means is that we're going to be co-developing through the mechanism of their forward deployed engineers working with our engineering teams on client sites. So we have announced two design partners, BMO and Amalgamated Bank, and we are going to be building a financial crimes agent from the ground up, dedicated to these two early design partners. And that's a unique combination, and we feel really, really energetic, and we think it's going to be a great success for us, and then eventually a product that can be rolled out more broadly.
So what's been the strategy up until this point for AI? You have this now as your mandate. Before this partnership, how have you been thinking about how AI actually gets embedded into the services that you provide?
Yeah. So we've gone through, like every organization, large and small, a fair level of experimentation. So it's fair to say in the last couple of years, we focused first and foremost on employee literacy, getting the best tools in a safe manner to our employee base, which is almost 60,000 people worldwide, to get them literate on these tools for whatever use case that is most prominent to their day-to-day lives. As we graduated towards that, we got more technical teams using things like GitHub Copilot to generate, review, and test code. And we saw great uptake from that. Over 90% of our development base uses that daily and generates code automatically using AI. And then as we started to go from the internal productivity, efficiency use cases, we really graduated towards putting this inside the heart of our products and our platforms. And we've done several of those across our core-based systems, which are lending, deposit, core banking systems, and payments. And this is just an extension of that, of taking what Anthropic brings plus what we bring, and co-developing something through this forward deployed engineered model to put it in the hands of our clients, right, in a safe environment that is provided by FIS.
Was there really any question in your mind that Anthropic would be your partner?
We get this a lot. So look, we absolutely want to be using the best tools out there. So we already consume OpenAI's models through Azure, which is a great big. Microsoft is a great strategic cloud partner of ours. We host a number of applications on AWS. What became sort of very prominent over the last kind of 6 or so months as Anthropic took a lead in enterprise and their own go-to-market directly with banks, is that there was a natural fit there. in the path and the go-to-market that they were trying to get to, and where we were looking to meet our customers. So eventually that came together really, really well. So yeah, that kind of folded in very naturally, let's say.
Can you take us deeper into what it looks like day to day when these engineers, these FDEs, are actually embedded with you, with your clients? What does that relationship look like? How are you knowledge sharing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a first of its kind, that's what I'll say. When FDEs land, they almost work from a blank piece of paper. So they almost take away all biases, misconceptions around how a product or a system actually works, and they design it from first principles. That and Anthropic calls them the Navy SEALs. There's only about 2 handfuls of these people inside of Anthropic, so it's a very, very special technical skill that they put to solve pain points that we point them to, and that first one is financial crime. So essentially what will happen is they will land and they will evaluate and thoroughly review every process, every workflow, every handoff in and out of systems, and they will capture them. They will then use the power of Claude's LLM, right, to understand how that's working and optimize it, okay, which is a very, very important piece, and they'll do that from the ground up. The key comes in, where FIS comes in, is like they talk about the harness around the model. So LLMs are non-deterministic by nature. Every input you give it, it's a slightly different variant output each and every time. So how do you control for that when you're doing and you're touching money and financially regulated systems? Well, the harness that we co-design and co-build together is going to ensure that we govern and we maintain control where we need to, and human in the loop and things like that throughout all times of this journey. Not just that, we build this agent so it has auditability, traceability that meets bank grade and regulators' requirements. So that's the effort that's going to go into building these things. And obviously the reason that we've taken 2 design partners is to get a really good range between them of how this activity works inside their banks. And what a good filing looks like, what a bad filing looks like, and really put that into the power of Claude and let it really reimagine some of the workflows and processes that have been a certain way and very, very human intensive over decades, and reimagine them in the agentic world. So that's kind of what we're doing.
So they're coming in without a lot of prior knowledge of the industry, of the needs of your clients, of what FIS is doing, and they're looking at where are the efficiencies, where can they build. I think something that is on the minds of a lot of people is, how exclusive is this partnership? If there are only a handful of them, and then you've got some other competitors who look at what you're doing and say, well, this looks great. Do you have guardrails around what you're working on with them specifically that doesn't lend itself to being used by other companies?
Yeah, so what I would say is that we've spent months and months with Anthropic to get to this announcement stage. So we feel we're going to be a category leader in agentic for banking. And we feel that this plan, plus others that we're doing, will keep us at the bleeding edge for our customers, right? That's the most important thing. Around being exclusive or otherwise, I think the way we think about it is, if we meet our customers to solve their problems, and our first family of agents is financial crimes, but then we'll move on with a roadmap that we've already kind of curated through customer feedback. I think time will tell, and I think if you end up owning the space for the customers, and the customers look to us as our trusted provider, because we already power so much of the operations in the back office and middle office of a bank, we feel it's our position to lose, to not meet them there with partnerships like this, and really build and roll out production bank-grade agents at scale. So we feel that this is something unique. We've got an advantage that it's one of a kind as it stands. What it's going to look like in 6 months' time, only time will tell. But we feel we've got a really good plan in place. We've invested a lot of our resources, of our time, of our energy, curating this. So it's got all the recipe for being hugely successful, not only for us, but for our clients.
But I guess what I'm hearing is there's not really a definitive agreement on the exclusivity of what they're doing with you.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, with a company like Anthropic,
sure.
They have their own ambitions. It's no secret that publicly they're out with some of the largest banks in the world, as they should be. So I think, I think the way we think about it is, where FIS already has a base system inside of a bank, it's most natural instead of ripping that out or starting from scratch, that you use that decades of trust relationship to build on it with a partner like Anthropic, who have the world's leading LLM as it stands, and really creating that to solve client problems. And look, we've got thousands of bank clients, thousands. So I think demand at this moment is outstripping the supply and the energy we can give it. So I think there's enough room there for us to be really, really successful, and Anthropic to have, where it suits them, direct relationships with some of these customers too.
I mean, you know where I'm going with this. You know the big question that everyone is asking, from investors down to even business leaders, is, are we going to be disintermediated by these companies that could just go in, especially if they're learning from you? You're giving them the chair next to you, right?
Yep.
And so it sounds like you feel pretty confident in the moat that you've built.
Yeah. So one thing we feel extremely confident about, and it's undoubtable that I don't think Anthropic has any intention in the near or medium term to be a regulated financial institution, okay? And that takes decades, by the way, to build the trust of regulators and to have the compliance and trust bar. And that has been the DNA of FIS. We have built these systems over decades, and they work, and they're there for our clients to run almost every aspect of a bank, and that's not something that can be given up or traded out overnight. So I think that Anthropic would maintain a position that they want to be the most leading AI company for enterprise. We want to be the financial infrastructure that supports financial technology and financial institutions across the world. I think there's enough for them to have a phenomenal business, as they already have, without getting into regulated financial processes and being on the hook for financial outcomes, just like FIS is today, but has been for the last 60 years that we've been around. So that's kind of my view on it.
All right, well, we have a clip of Anthropic talking about this, so let's listen to that.
The first use case we're really tackling together is financial crimes use case, and we're taking on something pretty significant together. This is not, we didn't sort of say, hey, let's do the easy one first. But I think probably the thing I can hopefully demystify for folks is this is not a moment where it's just like, hey, let the AI look at some data, have some tools, and figure out what's fraud and what isn't. We are taking a lot of the techniques that all of you use day to day in your jobs, but the first is a lot of this process is actually deterministic. A lot of what Claude is doing behind the scenes is helping make better the deterministic systems that drive those signals. And that is a really important ingredient of making trustworthy AI, is that you're using the intelligence level where there's a gray area, you need guardrails, and you let the models work in that context. But the second thing is that you're letting Claude cook, and you're letting it code, and you're letting it update the models, and you're using all of those things. And so the combination of that is important. The other piece is the audit trail. It's not enough. I think everybody's been through an audit, had a regulator come in. It's not enough to have the right answer. You have to prove why you did, what led you to the outcome. And the ability for Claude to, every single time, document its chain of thought, provide that information, make that part of the official record, use that for future evals to make the process better, have that be part of the scrutiny that comes in. Somebody wants to understand why a particular decision was made. That's an incredibly powerful thing that allows you to move forward with surety.
I think one of the other fascinating parts of the announcement for me is that it's single platform. There's also not a lot of detail into the commercial partnership component of this. Can you walk me through kind of who owns what, right? The IP, for example, the workflow, and how you're balancing all of that as you're thinking about the commercial relationship now and then going forward with them?
Yeah, so both legal teams and lawyers were clearly all over this, and we've clearly landed in a really good spot. I think the simple way to think about it is the IP that we developed through this partnership is FIS's, and that means that the end deliverable, the agent that we build, will be maintained by FIS, and the forward deployed engineers are jump starting FIS's knowledge to be able to build these agents using the Anthropic APIs and toolkits in their infrastructure. That's what this partnership is really is developing. I don't think they have an aspiration to be in the business of building custom agents for any vertical, let alone financial services. That's our business, and therefore we're going to maintain that IP and that product. As you get into workflows, listen, as we work with our design partners, they already trust us with running mission critical workflows and systems on behalf of them that power actually moving money, actually storing value, actually being responsible for end financial outcomes. And we continue to maintain our position as a leader in that category, and that doesn't change with the construct of this partnership that we've announced.
And just commercially, how are you arranging this on the revenue side? Are you passing on from additional costs that you might be adding to your services for your customers and passing that through to Anthropic? What are the rev share? Is it rev share? How are you looking at this?
Yeah, so I'd say it's too early to have a final view on the commercial agreement. Our early view points to the following. It's clear that pricing mechanisms for all agents, right, are changing, and the industry is leaning towards kind of outcome-based pricing for this, and that's a trend that we've been seeing across all areas. So I think that's kind of stating the obvious. It's also clear that compute and token consumption is the scarcest commodity in the world right now. Everyone is trying to get more of it, evidenced by all the deals that are happening in tech. Between Amazon and the big data center providers to have more capacity. So I think that obviously generates an element of variable cost that we are going to have to not only bear but put into our pricing mechanism as our cost, just like we already do with cloud and other variable sort of technology costs. And then there's going to be some sort of uplift that we can maintain through operational improvements that we're sort of enhancing, some superior outcome-based. This first family of agents, the cost of getting it wrong for banks can run into billions of dollars of fines, right? And therefore, we're really attacking a problem that is not only operationally burdensome from a cost perspective, but the cost of doing it wrong has fines attached to it. So I think as we think about the monetary TAM, there's enough of a surface area there as we develop and mature the revenue model that there's going to be enough in there for this to be commercially viable. So
you're worried about the cost a little bit of the token. I mean, a lot of people don't like talking about cost per token and cost of intelligence, however you want to brand it, but how are you thinking about that variability? Because even though cost per token is going down, the utility of it, the demand for it far exceeds maybe that decline.
Yeah.
So tell me about when you're in that model, how are you juggling?
Yeah, so look, the most capable models are clearly, have a premium attached to them, so Opus.
And the newest.
Exactly that. So I think that is going to be a trend we're going to continue to observe given the compute constraints that I think the industry is facing. How we think about it is when we co-design these things, the benefit we get from working very, very closely with their forward deployed engineers is as you set up these harnesses and you set up these workflows, the real architecture comes when you start to toggle between what workflow and process needs a Sonnet family of models versus Opus, which is more token intensive. So really how you engineer and co-develop these things, we think we can get the most effective use of token management through that. But we're only going to know more of this as you develop it, and it's running in test environments. It's starting to produce results, and we strongly feel that the space and the use case we're attacking has a large human labor-intensive cost attached to it, and banks have told us the magnitude that they spend on tools, on systems, on handoffs, on the human capital. And that's not to say that cost is going to disappear, but if they can streamline that, but make the end output, the quality of the end output better, or improve the signal going into that investigation process of financial crimes, we think that's a huge unlock, and we think there's value there to capture, and banks are willing to pay for that value ultimately. So that's how we're thinking about the management of token from a cost perspective, but also the revenue opportunity as we attack this space. And we're going to be extremely thoughtful as the use case we apply this to. If it doesn't make economic sense to go after a use case because we think the token cost is higher or won't be economically viable, then clearly we're going to throttle that back as we think about our roadmap with Anthropic.
I recently sat with the startups and VC partnerships go to market at OpenAI, and I asked him kind of this question, a similar question, which is, is there like a Honda Accord version, right, of this? I mean, for everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. For the use cases, it's going to be a little bit different. Maybe it's Sonnet, maybe it's Opus. Are you seeing that emerge, though? Are you seeing a pattern where, like this model is sufficient, even though it's not the latest, as you're working through it?
Yeah, we are seeing that. And, if you just take one element of any workflow, document ingestion, right? Document ingestion is something that, depending on, irrespective of the vertical or use case, has been fine-tuned, and these LLMs now have a skill to ingest a document, read it, transcribe it, etc., etc. That is becoming less and less intensive, and every one of these kind of processes, these handoffs, requires some level of document ingestion. So we are seeing elements of it where you can use a lighter model, right, which can kind of reduce the overall burden on your token consumption. So that's kind of one slither of an example that we've come across where we've been able to sort of manage that. I'm sure there are others, but we're going to discover more of this through the design partner that kicks off pretty much after we've kind of announced today. The real work will start, post today.
Yeah, exploration takes time and money. I'm curious, in the press release, the quote that is attributed to FIS's CEO and President Stephanie Ferris is that Anthropic is the, quote, first AI provider. What does that mean?
What we're saying here is we clearly have a lot of models that we're using through our large hyperscaler technology cloud providers. So I referenced AWS Bedrock and Azure. We clearly, the cloud providers have already exposed underlying LLM models through that, and we've been using that for a host of internal applications. I would say this is the first, so we have a direct relationship with Microsoft, and we use Copilot Suite across all of our employee base. That's a direct, tangible example where all of our teams all over the world in all different functions are using it every single day as part of their operating system. The first is probably pointing to the fact that this is the first direct relationship we've said publicly is going into our product suite. So not internal tool base, but our product suite in a truly integrated way to really co-design and co-engineer this, as we've sort of mentioned. And we're super, super excited by that.
Why now? And why start with financial crimes?
Yeah, why now? So as I mentioned about the employee literacy, we've been spending a lot of times getting our employee base very literate. And really the power only gets unlocked when you have a workforce that is well trained, that has gone through some of the basic easy wins and use cases, and we're at that point to graduate towards the sort of the next level. It's also clear, as I mentioned earlier, the Anthropic family of models have become such a driving force that enterprises want to consume them. I think that can be said for almost every company in the world. So that's also been a forcing function. And then why financial crime? So again, when we looked at a whole range of use cases, we needed to meet a certain bar, which was very, very rigid, and a lot of things fell away when we kind of set this framework. So item number one, we needed it to be something that was uniform enough that every bank does this in a broadly similar fashion. And the beauty about financial crimes is it's regulated by FinCEN, and you have a SAR filing that is a templated document that you have to carry out, right? So that introduces a level of uniformity that you can actually apply an agentic use case to. So that was kind of point number one. Point number two, we needed our products and platforms, our base systems and the data that they generate, the events that they generate, to be a signal into improving the financial crime investigation process. And we felt with our core banking suite, our money movement and our regulatory tools that we already provide our banks, that we had an additional signal no one else could offer. That was number two. Number three, it needed to be a large enough surface area, right? Every bank has to kind of do this. Whether you're in the business or not, you have to do AML investigations and file SARs. So it became back to the monetization and the TAM opportunity that was real. And lastly, we needed to convince Anthropic, and they were very convinced early on, that this is something that Claude could have some real success in sort of solving for. And they felt this, head and shoulders above any other use case we tabled, was a prime example of something that Claude had the power to really change the game on. So we had a very rigid criteria, and we pressure tested this in all angles, and we got very, very comfortable as we started to bring a host of these design partners to the table, that they were all unanimously telling us the same feedback that fit our framework. So we felt very, very confident that this should be the first launch.
What precisely is it that you have been pressure testing, and what components of this have been more arduous that the AI needs to take over, and agentic AI specifically?
Yeah, so we've been pressure testing which is going to be the first family of models that are going to be released, and financial crimes, for the reasons I outlined through this framework, was the top use case that sort of came to mind. We're still going to go through the design phase. So you have a signal that starts when you go through any investigation, right? The signal prompts you to do the investigation process, and we feel the bulk of this agent will handle in an autonomous fashion, going through all the different handoffs, the systems, the case management systems around how to actually investigate and give rigor to this financial crime process, and then it will do all the things up to the point that the SAR has to be filed. But that's where we feel, from a design principles and a trust and a compliance perspective, there needs to be a human in the loop. So we're still going to delegate that access to the authority of the human, the financial crimes agent that's actually working this process, to actually carry out the filing, do their thorough review, make sure that they're comfortable. But we'll be able to do all the steps and give it, an action log, a trace log, such that they're comfortable with the end decisions that we're going to be recommending through the agentic workflow. But also, should any regulator ask, we want to make sure that this is going to be bank grade and regulatory ready to meet all the requirements that banks are faced with.
In the release specifically, or in the announcement, it sounds like there is about 97 to 98% of low value manual work that is being eliminated through the agent. Does that mean that out of 100 AML workers, that only 2 are going to have their jobs?
No.
Okay.
By no means are we saying that. So what we're saying there is that as we evaluated some of these processes and we looked at some of our banks that do this, but also our own teams. So we have compliance teams that have worked at FinCEN, have been AML officers and analysts across all banks. We have that internal expertise as subject matter experts that are actually involved inherently in the design and the build of this agent. What we found is that the standard operating procedures that we evaluated and reviewed pointed to various handoffs between systems. A lot of work which was similar in nature, repetitive, manual, that could be done by an agent, right? And that's what we found. So we found the bulk of that activity to be, uniform in manner, very manual reviews, going through documents, trying to piece together and join the dots. That's the piece we're pointing at that we think there's a huge unlock for. The actual judgment and the actual filing and everything that goes into that, we still maintain our position that that will need to be done by human. Coming back to the staff that are actually doing it, this comes back to a throughput problem. So right, if any process in a bank that's human intensive, you're throttled by how many people you have, right? And it's not just quantity of people, it's availability of subject matter expertise. And if you speak to any bank officer who's managing financial crimes teams, it's not just having those people, it's maintaining that subject matter expertise as demand grows for these things. So it's actually a limiting factor for many banks. So what we're doing with this agent workflow is unlocking that and giving them more throughput through the system. Now we will let our banks decide how they wish to reallocate those resources or structure those teams, but we feel really, really confident that this will be a genuine product that unlocks a huge amount of value for these kind of teams.
So you're not going out to clients saying, hey, if you use our agent, you can reduce this workforce?
Absolutely not. They're coming to us as they naturally should and always will as a trusted partner to think about operational efficiency, right? And we, given we power a lot of their systems, have a duty to offer that up and to continue staying at the bleeding edge of innovation by developing products that meets them where they need the most, right? And this is one area amongst many that just hasn't gone through a huge amount of innovation for a while. And I think when agentic and agents have come along, a lot of people, we've had a lot of inbound around, is this something that we could actually get some help with? And that makes us feel confident that this will be sort of successful in our early launch.
One thing that one theme I've been talking to a lot of business leaders about on Macrotalk is the relationship between human workers and agents. It sounds like there might be a little bit of a learning curve. Maybe not. I mean, as you're now co-designing and co-building, what have you found to be the case when you've got agents now working side by side with human colleagues?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be something that evolves. I think what we're seeing is you still need a lot of humans, both in the design and the development of these things, and the harness layer. So we shouldn't mistake how complicated that harness layer is. Just like software, you need to maintain observability, runtime. You need to patch bugs that appear. Like, there's still going to be an element of the software development lifecycle for agentic development that is still going to be maintained by technologists, whether it's us or on the client side. So I think we're seeing that. I don't think that just disappears. I think it just changes form to be much more agentic, and the type of activity is taking a slightly different construct. The other thing we're seeing is clearly there's going to be an element of safety that's going to come over time, of letting the agent carry out a certain command. And remember, these agents by nature are multi-step. So whilst the Copilot AI tool that everyone's been experiencing, you give it a prompt and it gives you, that's a single step process. Agents now have the ability to do a multi-step process. So I think people, our nature and the regulatory appetite and the risk parameters of a bank are going to have to get comfortable with an agent carrying out these multi-step processes, being like, okay, what did it do and what was that step there and how do I see the audit log? And I think that's just going to come through experience and over time. But if you build this in a way and get on design partners from the very onset, we think that helps the adoption curve significantly. And we've had strong engagement from every leader that runs these large financial crime teams at banks, come to the table and actually voice where they're going to see the most benefit, voice the design of this input. So we've been really privileged that this has been something that has been extremely well received, and we're getting a lot of great feedback to help design and build it from the onset.
It sounds like eventually it'll be, and I'm oversimplifying, like using a washing machine or putting a dishwasher to work. If we get the results that we see over time, that it does its job.
Yeah, I think with all technology, let's say, everything from the desktop to computer to mobile phones to iPads, it was clunky to start with. You were figuring out, interoperability and how it worked and how things look different on different screens. I think agents is going to be no different. I think, it's proved that humans are very adept at running technology, and that's going to be the same for agents. I think the step change function that will happen is when you've got agents managing agents. And that is a world that I think many are saying is inevitable. So currently we're in the phase where humans are designing and producing these agents to work for specific tasks and workflows. There's going to be a time and a generation where it's the agents that's you get the agent to build and design and launch a product. You just give it a prompt and a use case, and then it's managing a family of agents. I think, at least for financial services, that seems like the next phase, but it feels like a bit of a distance away. I think we've got a little bit of work to do to catch up and get mature on just the agentic step change. But I think we can all imagine a future where it's agents to agents, and whatever else that may bring with it.
So what's the sort of accuracy threshold now? What is your own tolerance for when one of these agents is actually ready for production? Especially because if you own this IP, then FIS is kind of on the hook, right? If the agent is wrong.
Yeah, so we're going to get into a lot of those design principles. I think at the very minimum, they're going to be no different to the software we support today. So we run, as I mentioned, mission critical software that either moves money, stores value, or is responsible for something that's a ledgering activity, whether that's a loan or a deposit. And there's zero tolerance for getting that wrong. right? If we get it wrong, our banks get it wrong, and their end customers get it wrong, we will maintain the same level of mindset and philosophy when it comes to agentic. And I think that's why we feel really, really confident, because that's a mindset and a cultural shift that we're going through as an organization, and we're really up for the challenge of how do you continue to maintain everything we do today, that trust barrier that is so high through decades of relationship with our clients. How do you maintain that in an agentic world? But that's just the next phase and iteration of the company as it goes through its chapters.
There's a lot of talk about safety, operating safely within, especially your industry-regulated workflows. What does it actually mean, though, to be able to control maybe these agents in a safe manner?
Yeah. So safe is an overarching term that we use, and not lightly. Safe in every aspect, right? So the way this is designed, built, does it have a kill switch? Is the human in the loop in the right place? Are the data practices in and out of our environment protected by PII and various other regulations? It's safe in every single manner, right? Are the legal barriers there to protect, what's IP to us, what's IP to our clients, what's IP for Anthropic? Safe is an all-encompassing word that we have put at the heart of this design, right? And we've had great response and alignment from both Anthropic and our clients when it comes to this. And I think, we want to be slow and methodical in doing this the right way. We could easily ship an agent that claims to have all of this power and this prowess, but we would miss a number of these steps that are truly important to us. So we would rather be really, really diligent and design this in the right way, test it, countless times to make sure it really meets the bank grade requirements that our technology already upholds today. And that's something that we're taking very, very seriously throughout this process.
I think a very unique challenge for FIS is that the company has grown to its current size through lots and lots of acquisitions, over the past 60 years or so. Data readiness is something that a lot of companies struggle with, even without all of the acquisitions and having to conform systems together. What did it take for you to get this data ready?
Yes, so we have certainly grown through acquisitions, and I think that's very much in the DNA and brand of FIS. We've been able to acquire family of products, and expand phenomenally through the acquisition machine. I myself came through an acquisition with WellPay. The data readiness is something that's been kind of in the works for a while, as you imagine. So we've also launched today a new data and AI platform, which really underpins all the future of agents and agentic development. And what it essentially does is it allows us to have a single instance where we can hydrate that with some of our core platforms that are going to be signals to these agents in a manner that's obviously cloud, has the right level of latency, it's governed in the right sort of manner, and that really is the bedrock. And we've been building that over the last couple of years, and we're launching it today, and that really will give us the comfort that the architecture, the way we extract, transform, and load data is done in all the right ways to support agentic development. And we have a huge practice and investment into that to be ready for this.
How long it's been a while? Is it, I've talked to companies where they've been working on this for 3 years prior to even needing it for AI.
Yeah, I would say it's been in the works for several years for our side. Clearly we have dedicated data engineers and data teams that do this. I would say it's one of those things that is never done, right? You're always tweaking the ways you can kind of do it more effectively. You're leaning on some amazing partners to underpin some of that technology for you, who themselves are launching new features into that. So I would say it's a continuous process, and I would say that it's use case driven. So for the financial crime agent, there's certain data sets that we need to hydrate into this platform to be ready for those signals, and that is all on the roadmap, and that work is happening behind the scenes as we get ready for the forward deployed engineers to actually land and build the early parts of this kind of agent. So I would say, yes, we've been at it for years, but I would say it's something that is continuous. I can't imagine a roadmap that just stops one day and we say we're done. It's a continuing, evolving practice as you groom your backlog and you expand your use cases.
Can you share some insights, advice on this and making it more streamlined? A lot of companies are really struggling with this very first part?
Yeah, I would say, it needs to have CEO and even board attention. So we publish a roadmap that, the entire executive team can see.
On this work stream alone?
It's an enterprise item on the agenda. And every team knows where they stand in the roadmap. It's sufficiently funded, so when we give product teams their capital for development, we always have a requirement to be like, okay, what are you doing around your data? We have a dedicated technology practice that looks at architecture, data engineers that have huge amount of experience doing just this. So I'd say you have to dedicate time, attention, executive resource to it. It has to be sufficiently funded and thought through as you think about capital allocation and your product development. It has to be culturally embedded in that process, and that's something that we've kind of done at FIS over the last couple of years, which gives us now a great platform to jump off when it comes to all things agentic.
Yeah, you're leading me very smoothly into these next questions, which is really about your role specifically and the culture. There's been some debate inside some companies around like who owns the AI strategy. Clearly at FIS, you are that person, but in other companies, it's a wrangle between maybe the CEO or the CTO or the CIO or the CFO. What do you think underpins AI culture? And how are you thinking about just AI culture specifically in FIS, especially when there's also worker anxiety around it? So from listening to your peers, from what you've seen work, from what you're reading and hearing, what do you think is the through line in getting people on the same page with AI?
Yeah, look, it's a delicate balance on who owns it. I think the answer most companies will agree with and how we think about it as operators inside of FIS, we all own it. We all own it. It may be more prominent in someone's job title to think through the prioritization of certain use cases and as how you fund those initiatives, which currently sits in my world as head of corporate strategy, looking across the organization, seeing where the big pockets where AI can make a meaningful difference and funding those activities such that they stay an enterprise priority. But that is one portion of AI enablement and literacy in an organization. You then need technology teams, adept with this technology, continuing to push the boundaries on what it can do, how it can do it. You need, our people office to roll out training and to make sure that we're tracking usage and, how this is being used by the employee base. You need risk teams to be making sure that the policies stay up to date. You need vendor management to make sure that we're onboarding the right set of vendors and not duplicating two vendors across use case A and B. You need the CFO to fund this activity sufficiently. So I would say that we are all owners of it. So when we sit at the very top table and we look at our executive scorecard across all of our objectives across AI and each function and our metrics for success, I say we all come to the table, right? And that's something that not only Stephanie but our board and our investors expect of us. And we're also being equally transparent. So every earnings call over the last couple of quarters at least, we are taking a front foot on what we're doing, how well we're doing it, and holding ourselves to account. And accountability becomes crucially important, when you're thinking about AI, to be honest with yourself on where you are and where you want to go, and to keep focus on that. So I think that's the culture, as you talk about a through line, that I would say resonates most with where FIS is in its journey. And we know what we know, and we look to really, really big hyperscaler trusted partners like Microsoft, Anthropic, Databricks, and others to help us on that journey with everything that they're seeing in their respective businesses. So I'd say overall, from a culture perspective, that's how it all comes together at the top CEO table when we think about this topic.
But is there one person that has like the veto power?
I would say that's the CEO.
That's the CEO.
In every organization, I would say the ultimate yay or nay has to sit with the chief executive officer.
Why are you prioritizing where and how you're deploying AI agents the way that you are?
It really comes back to how we think about the DNA of FIS, right? We have scale and distribution unlike no other. We have decades of experience in complex, deeply regulated industries all over the world. We have platforms and products that have served customers for mission critical items for decades and decades. So when we think about the DNA of our business and what makes us the company that we are and what our customers look to us for, it becomes very, very obvious what you should be doing with AI, right? Because you're led by the DNA of your business. Your base platforms generate an outsized portion of the economic value of the company, and that's where AI should show up most. We also look at our function. So we have a sizable technology office, and we have a sizable client office that serves our customers, and we do a lot of back office sort of support for a lot of our banks. And those are two large pockets where AI has already had an impact in the external market. So we see it as a very simple way to take what's happening in the market with these leading tools, these specialized tools by function, and apply that within our practices. So I would say when you really take a step back and you think about the business that you run and where AI has an unlock, it starts to become a natural process in terms of where you allocate capital, how you prioritize the roadmap, and how you push for success on outcomes against each of those areas.
When you read the news and you see headlines around different partnerships, it doesn't even have to be close to what you guys are doing. Is it ever clear to you when a company is just doing AI for the sake of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Look, no day goes by where you don't read at least 10 headlines, everyone with AI mentioned in it. I think we're just in that phase, if I'm honest with you, of every company wanting, with good intentions for the right thing for their business, to do that. I think it's no secret that public markets are clearly scrutinizing each and everything that every company does. And there's been pressure on valuations since probably Q4 last year around sort of the terminal value of some of these businesses in the future. I'm not here to comment on whether that's right or wrong. I'm here to ensure that we have a good level of confidence and authority that what we're doing is right. We feel that we're on a really good path, and more importantly, the feedback loop with our customers is resonating. That is the very simple checklist that we use to ensure that we're doing the right things at the right time to meet our customers where they are, and we feel extremely confident with our plans and things to date and everything that we've got coming up for the rest of this year and beyond, that we're in a really good place to tackle this.
And so you just kind of process it, and you don't take too much stock, it sounds like.
We take signal from it. So every partnership, we actually have an AI bot, no surprise, that does our competitive intelligence. So we list all of our competitors across each of our product lines, of which there's hundreds. And at the end of the week, it produces an executive report. And it has enough intelligence of what we're trying to do where it gives us a little bit of so what. So it will say company A has launched thing X, right? And the AI bot will say, okay, based on everything I can see within FIS of your plans, your procedures, your roadmaps, your strategy, what does that mean? And it gives us a quick response. Our strategy teams then analyze that, being like, okay, do we need to react to that? Do we need to respond to that? Do we need to change or tweak any of our product roadmaps? And that's just a weekly behavior. And that executive report lands on every executive's desks Friday morning without fail as a recap. So we stay very close to the pulse, not just with competitors, but also our banks. Some of our banks are going direct for these technologies, which is absolutely fine. But we're taking signal of that and say, okay, if you're going direct for that part of your business, that makes sense. But here's where we can help you, and that's already on our roadmap. So then we'll proactively go out to those banks who have announced something, being like, did you know this might be the next thing you look at? We're already there, right? So we use that as a signal both for intelligence, but also to feed our customer teams on the front line.
I think I need this news tool as well. So if we were to run this headline through your news tool, why is this a big deal? What would your AI news digest tell us? Because as you've mentioned, there's partners being announced all the time, from Anthropic and up and down.
I think it would say the following. This is a first of its kind. No other infrastructure global provider at scale like FIS has done a direct relationship where they use FDEs to co-develop something from the ground up. It would also say many companies tackle AML and financial crimes. No large trusted provider that's been around for decades has used a hyperscaler to attack this problem. I think it would say it's unique in that when we've announced this, not only have we announced this unique model with forward deployed engineers, we've done it with design partners who are ready to go from the day dot, because we've been talking to them for many months prior. So I think it would kick out a couple of things that are extremely unique, and paving a new way. And we hope to pave the way for many more of this, but we think we're leading the charge by this being the first of its kind.
And you mentioned that this is also something that you all use to pick up on signals. What other signals are you looking for in the macro environment now to help you shape your designs on AI for FIS?
Yeah, we continue to track every product announcement and partnership that gets done, and how it's done and the construct it's done, how heavy a partner is involved versus proprietary technology. We continue to track that. Clearly, we look at earnings every quarter, bank earnings, financial service providers like us. We continue to measure and track the tone, the bullishness, how forthcoming they are on metrics and what they're exposing, investment numbers, adoption rates, things like that. We continue to track all of those things, and those continue to be signals. And then we also track executive movements. So how are board compositions, executive teams changing? Are they hiring dedicated leaders for this or not? That's another, because look, ultimately, these are humans producing these things, and the work has to get done by a workforce and great leaders, of which we have a lot of expertise here at FIS, and we continue to track that as a metric too.
As we round out our conversation and end with some questions about the future, how concerned are you or not about public perception around AI specifically? I mean, you're obviously not a hyperscaler, you're not a frontier lab, but we've seen a lot of the tension now boil over into personal attacks on some executives and even local policymakers. When you read headlines like that, what does that signal to you?
Look, I think it increases the awareness of how big and heated of an issue it becomes. We have, whether it's cyber attacks, physical or otherwise, we have a very, very, very mature and large team looking at every risk parameter across AI, scanning for threats continuously. So I would say all it does is just heighten the awareness and the importance of that. And yeah, we stay very laser focused and tuned into everything that's happening around the world.
Are you worried about the builds that are required and the resources necessary to get there? Data center builds, natural resources. I mean, ultimately, it's not your core business, so it's...
Exactly, yeah. That's further up in the supply chain, and that's why, we trust in the partners that we've done relationships with, that they will solve that. There's clearly a contractual relationship where they have a duty to fulfill the obligations in everything that we've announced, and we trust, with all the great minds that are going into this, that they will figure this out. But yeah, that's further up chain, but we're trusting some of the largest hyperscalers in the world right now, and we have trust in them that this won't be a big of an issue as perhaps the market is making it out to be, and it's like a temporary moment just given the sheer demand, right? And I think if you look at any technology, the onset of that early demand obviously caused a little bit of noise and chaos, and I think we're just at that point in the cycle.
We're all constantly making decisions with imperfect information. What do you wish you knew now that would give you more confidence about what you should be doing and are doing with the AI strategy for FIS?
Yeah. I think if I had a time machine that could port me into the future, and it would give me the exact moment where there's going to be an inflection point from human to agent to agent to agent, I think that would be a phenomenal insight to know how far we are away from a point in time where that is a true, mature reality for everyone in the industry.
Why is that?
I think it will you can work back from it.
Yeah.
You would work back from the preparedness and what you need to believe to be true, what investments, what learnings, what architecture design choices you need to make to be ready for that. I think that's such a big question. But if I could see a time series and say, okay, it's that point and we have X time between now and then, I think that would be very telling.
Anything else that we didn't talk about today that you have been thinking about as you've been preparing for this announcement?
No, I think we're hugely excited to launch it, and we're just laser focused on getting to work. There's a lot to be done to build these things and launch them successfully, and we're thrilled and eager to go.
Amazing. Well, congratulations again, and thank you for
much.
having me here at Emerald.
A pleasure.
Thanks.